Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the first ever official recording of As I Was Saying. So today's topic is the effect of COVID lockdowns on Indian students living abroad. And I have with me three Indian students who are currently living abroad or have recently gone home from wherever they were studying abroad. I have to my right Prakash Singh, who is a PhD student in symplectic geometry at the University of Western Ontario in London, Ontario, Canada. I have below me on the screen Rajenki Das. She is a PhD student in statistics. Don't need to wave. She is a PhD student in statistics at the University of Manchester, UK. And beside her on the screen is Mahima Grover. Uh, she studied a master's in ads management at the University of Manchester, UK, and she is currently back home in Punjab, Haryana, Jamnagar. Anyway, that's not
Haryana.
important.
Yeah.
And I am me, Dr. De Biswas. I am a PhD student. I'm finishing my PhD in algebra at the University of Manchester, UK. So let me start with the first question that I've got prepared. Is there anything that suggests to you that there might be, is there anything which tells you or suggests to you that there might be a difference in the lockdown experience of a foreigner in a land under lockdown uh, versus the experience faced by or experience faced by someone who is from that country, i.e., when the lockdown started, at least in the UK, started in March, right? March or April, I think end of March. I don't know when it started in Canada, Prakash. So as an Indian student living in the UK at that time, did you guys feel, and with Prakash, of course, you need to replace UK with Canada in this question. Did you guys feel that this lockdown is going to affect me differently, like compared to how it's going to affect, say, my friends who are actually from here, who are citizens of this country, who have certain legal rights in this country that I, as a visa holding foreigner, uh, do not? So let's start with Prakash, and then I'll go to Mahima and then Rajanki.
Actually, a priori, it would seem so that it would affect individuals differently based on the distinction you made.
Mm-hmm.
But the given the strictness of the lockdown in my home city, I think everyone is behaving in an isomorphic way. I mean, everyone is just remaining in their closed doors and they're completely cut off.
Mm-hmm.
So the the situations they are facing are quite uniform.
Were there any differences or escalations in the severity of the lockdown in your local area? Like given what was the reality in March uh, and what is
No,
the
the
reality
lockdown
now?
was pretty much the same throughout its duration. I mean, it's been opening recently, and now we are going out,
Right,
and the
right.
we don't people don't often do, they don't necessarily stay completely away from each other in grocery
Mm-hmm.
stores, but still, we are staying confined to our rooms.
Right. Okay, let's go to Mahima. Lockdown
Um,
experience, Indian versus like
yeah,
visa holding
personally,
versus non-visa holding. Yeah.
I think one of the first things that irritated me was the fact that I'm paying for an experience
Mm,
that I now have to have from a room, which I'm also
yes,
paying for.
yes.
I think that really irritated me.
And it's maybe worth mentioning here
And
that
then
the amount that you were paying was almost twice as much or
twice
even
what
more.
a national would pay. Yeah. Yeah, I think that was like my prime irritation because I was like, I'm here for a year, and if this is what I do for 6 months out of the 12 that I get, then was this all worth it at all? But then, yeah, as Prakash said, that towards the end it became sort of uniform because, like online classes picked up, and after the strikes were over in at the university, it did get better eventually. But yeah, my prime irritation continued to be how much I'm paying for an experience per se.
Okay, Rajanki?
Yeah, I think similar to Mahima, although not exactly the same. So one thing again, pursuing a PhD, even you might have experienced that having no workspace. So initially, I thought that it would be fine because, like, after all, I do most of my work on laptop or on a system. But then actually not having a workspace, or wherever you are staying, so it might not be a very big place,
Mm-hmm.
so there might be certain restrictions of some sort. So I think not having a proper workspace has actually affected my PhD. And like, so basically you were asking whether I feel there is a difference
Mm-hmm.
between the people from this country staying here during the lockdown, and for us who are from a different country, like the home country being different but being here during the lockdown. So I think, again, since the lockdown has been for a while, by lockdown I mean being in quarantine, not
Mm-hmm.
like the shops being shut or so. Just being away from home might be a little bit difficult for the international students, again, because there are so many conditions. For example, I don't know about you, but so my tenancy ends very
Mm-hmm.
soon and it's not renewed. So wanting to, again, having to move during this, and there is no, like, I don't have a, house or flat here where I can just, no backup place to go. So um, so
Right.
I think there are difficulties, but then also, I mean, there's not much you can really do about it.
Right. I mean, one thing that struck me the very moment the lockdown
Yeah,
announcement came through was
yeah,
that if I do not make good use of this time,
yeah, yeah,
I will never find a period of time quite like this again. And
yeah,
on this note, like for example, people often keep going on about, maybe like erroneously, I have no evidence to support this claim, that was it King Lear? The King Lear was written while Shakespeare was in
mm,
quarantine. Newton discovered the laws of gravity,
yeah,
while he was on a sabbatical in Lincolnshire. Like these kind of stories. So,
mm.
do you think these kind of stories, and I'll start with Prakash again, do you think these kind of stories tend to do a disservice to the theme or the purpose of lockdowns? Or do you think no matter what the situation is around you, or like all world over, you need to first think about yourself, and it comes from, like, I don't know, enlightenment principles of the primacy of the individual. So once a lockdown is announced, instead of fixating on, which some people might quite rightly fixate on, the number of deaths that the world is going to see, the way it's going to affect the most vulnerable sections of the society, like it did in India. We will come to that in a minute, like the whole migrant what is it called, migrant laborers scenario. And I keep telling people that India is probably the only country on earth that will, in which a migrant from Bihar, sorry, a worker from Bihar in Maharashtra will be a migrant, not a worker from Bihar, but a migrant. Anyway, we will come to that maybe later. So Prakash, like, do you think like this entitlement to the primacy of the individual, so to say, uh, can play a role in furthering one's aims and objectives, maybe academically, maybe in research, maybe professionally? Like once I'm in lockdown, I have all these pending tasks. I'm going to make sure I look after all of them. Prakash?
I think whatever you just mentioned, it has very little effect on your. I mean, that in itself has very little effect on your academic career. It's, it's when compared to the lockdown. It's, the lockdown
No,
has,
no,
as
I'm saying,
Rajenki
as
was
Rajenki
saying,
said, like most research students do a lot of their work in solitude. At least, like they don't need, unless they are doing research on I don't know, experimental physics or some kinds of chemistry where you need to use a lab to produce research results. If they are not in a situation like that, they work just by themselves. So once there is a lockdown around them, it is maybe easier for them to sit in a room and just keep working on whatever they want to work on. So I'm saying,
Mm,
do
You would
you?
think so. You would think so to
Mhm.
begin with, but eventually, what happens is, uh, you your I mean, your whole day starts lacking structure
Mhm.
because you are structured around say uh, giving lectures to say undergrads
Mhm.
or attending a few seminars
Right.
or talking to some graduate students. And although that may seem say useless or not in any way related to your work, but
Mhm.
it actually I'm realizing now that it actually is. And
Right.
absence of that does put me in a spot where I
Right.
have to force myself to a structure which is very difficult.
So Mahima, like, when it comes to people who are maybe a little bit more, well, shall we say, professionally minded? Well, I don't know whether you're professionally minded or not, and I don't want to again cast aspersions in that direction. But your degree wasn't, by its nature, a long 4 year, 5 year research degree, right? You came to the University of Manchester to get a degree in a period of time that wasn't that long, and after the degree you had maybe certain plans for yourself, right? So certain plans for your career. Maybe you wanted to get a job here, or travel to India, get a job there, whatever. So the
Yeah.
the the question that I put to Prakash maybe doesn't quite apply to you, in that
I mean,
way. But
to
what
be honest,
what
I
yeah,
think
sorry.
it's a very uniformly applicable question because
Right.
even though I might not be into as long drawn research as you all are, but like I had to structure my day because for the sake of my own sanity, if not academic
mm,
purposes,
mm,
because I realized that I can't be waking up at midday and then
mm,
skipping breakfast for like I thought I could do it, but I couldn't. So I think
mm,
the lockdown for me was about balancing my personal aspirations and creative passions with
mm.
my academic passions.
Right, right.
I think that I found like an interesting mix
by
because I
by
think
creative
yeah,
by
it took
creative
me about
passions you mean
2 weeks.
like, uh well, again, I don't want to assume what sort of creativity you most relish, but I'm saying, like, by creative passions it could be, I don't know, writing poems for someone, or writing a book, finishing a chapter of a novel for someone, like that sort of creative passions you mean?
Yeah, I mean for me, I realized I actually enjoy cooking, so
Right,
I spent more time making food for myself, which
right, right, right,
probably made no sense because I ate it none the same. But I enjoyed it. Like it was one thing I looked forward to after waking up. I started devising a menu for the next day. So
right.
basically, like just small things I started structuring into my day, which I found really helpful because it gave me more time to work on my essays that were due in like
Mm.
2 months. But I
Oh,
started
okay.
on in March because I knew I want to pace myself out.
Right. Um, and Rajenki, like, I'll put the same question to you, but maybe add that in statistics, however, sometimes you do need to be close to certain, like, com- certain, what should I say? I don't want to say supercomputers, but you know what I mean, like devices of that sort, devices that can run certain calculations, which maybe a mobile phone cannot. So is that not a problem anymore, because people can still, like, use those devices remotely from the, like, the comfort of their apartments?
No, that's still a problem because for higher computational purposes, you would require a better system.
Right.
And so this is something, so we had so again, we had a project on which we, like, one of my friends and I, we had to do something and it was computationally heavy. So like we found ways to just do it, but now because it's still continuing and the university is still shut, so we have found ways around it. So I am not really focusing that much on computation right now. So also because thankfully, because my PhD is actually on mathematics, so I can like, and there is not really high computational need, I
Mm.
can actually change the trajectory a little bit. So I have sort of changed it to
Right.
suit my requirements right now. But I mean, again, that is sorted for me, but I don't think it's for everyone.
Right.
And again, for like structuring the day in general, what Mahima said, for example, that she has realized that she loves cooking now. Same with me. So one of the favorite activities of my week of a day is grocery shopping. I and
Okay. Okay.
I, I don't know how it's
grocery
yeah.
shopping isn't exactly, but it is, well, I'm guessing it is a creative activity, but it isn't exactly the same bracket as cooking, right?
Yeah. Obviously not. No. I am saying that this is one of my favorite activities
Oh,
that
okay.
I really look forward to, because I mean that also requires a lot of planning, and it's just enjoyable because you go out
Right.
even.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
So
Yeah,
that's
one
it.
other thing that might be worth adding here is that people have started to realize that there is something about being in a workspace, shall we say, which you can't really replace by working from home. Or like, I mean, which can't be blanket replaced by working from home. And there is a slightly political point that one can make here, which
Yeah.
has to do with the length of the working week. So for a while, left-leaning Western European parties have been pushing for the working week to be reduced from 5 days to 4 days. And there have, I mean, for the longest time, the opposition to it is to mostly come from center-right political parties saying, no, it's just lefties wanting to do less work and get the same amount of money or get more money or whatever. But what this is showing is, in a way, that maybe being in a workplace, being in an office with colleagues isn't as disgusting an experience as people often make it out to be. Well, I'm not saying this validates or I don't know, disproves the claims of those center left or left leaning Western European parties about the 4-day working week. But I'm saying this is showing us that maybe when we are with colleagues, when we are with office mates, in the case of Rajenki and I, and we see them working on code, or we see them typing up their research, that motivates us to do the same even better. Or, I mean, of course, it can also be distracting. Like if you're in if you're in an office space and someone wants to have a chat with you, they can just come to you and speak to you, right? But in like there are so many other factors that are probably quite positive about having a physical workspace. One other thing that I'd like to come to now is how lockdowns or any kind of isolation can make people feel things that they wouldn't otherwise feel. For example, there's been a huge spike in voice calls, video calls between people who wouldn't normally speak. And maybe it's a good thing. Like maybe maybe those people would have been good friends in normal circumstances even. But the thing is, this has an obvious downside. Like say you know someone in your life and you don't really want to be friends with that person, but you also don't want to like completely subtract them from I don't know, from your dealings. So that person just exists in your life, and you are quite happy about the fact that you don't really have to be in the same workspace as them, or you don't really have to run into them on the streets every now and then, or whatever. But now that everything can be done over video, maybe such barriers, which often exist with a very good purpose in society, are not as strong anymore. So Prakash, like what have you got to say about that? Well, for example, like Prakash and I, like we went to the same university for a BSc, and we graduated like 5 years ago. We don't speak that much, and like when during this lockdown, like it didn't ever occur to me like, okay, fine, let's speak with Prakash now and see how he's doing. So I'm just saying, like, well, it's a joke, but so Prakash, like, what are your thoughts on this? Like, is an isolation um, like laden with such traps, like by its very nature? You're alone, you want someone to speak to, so whoever, well, not whoever, so like someone shows interest in speaking to you and you just go there.
I would say this is just what you are saying is just a small picture of just a small angle of a very big picture. Uh, because means there's also evidence to suggest that the amount of mental problems that people are facing
Mm.
has increased during this lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
people
no,
are
there have
trying
been
to
studies
find
showing
ways
that
to.
out of all the suicides, all the recorded suicides that have happened since the start of the lockdown, uh, like more than 50% would have been preventable under normal circumstances. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
so I don't necessarily think if so this the what you're saying is reaching out to people who like you have reached out to me, reaching out to people who you won't necessarily meet
Yeah.
in normal circumstance is a coping mechanism. It's not necessarily uh, justification.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Like people
And
are being like,
we are yet to see the full effects of this whole lockdown. Probably we will
right.
discover
Right.
when we analyze the situation, say, a
Mm-hmm.
year later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It will be for posterity to judge in a way. Mahima.
Yeah, I think I am a victim of the isolation that you're talking about, because the first few weeks I literally jumped at the opportunity to speak to whoever I could.
Mm.
And I think for me it wasn't as bad, because I knew I was in a country all by myself, so I was okay. But for a lot of my friends at home and a lot of my cousins and everyone, I think they had a more difficult time than I did, because suddenly they were at home. And unlike the UK, in India, the lockdown was like a complete restriction on movement outside of your house.
Right.
Like you could,
Okay.
like in the UK, we could leave for exercise or grocery or medicine. But in India, it was a complete lockdown,
You couldn't go out
like
for
a more
exercise,
complete. You couldn't go out for exercise. It was only grocery or
and they would
medicine.
check.
But even yeah. Even grocery would be like you had to. I think there were like early morning windows, so like you can go from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Then you have
Mm.
you have an evening window for 2 hours, and then it's completely shut 3 days of the week. So there were lots of rules, and I found my family finding it really difficult to cope with that level of confinement within their homes. So I found people reaching out to me more
Mm.
because they wanted to
Mm-hmm.
check in on how I'm doing, but I
Mm.
realized that they need checking in on more than I do.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. That's a good point.
And
Yeah. Sorry. Go on.
no, that's fine, please.
And also one thing that's maybe worth bearing in mind is internet connections. I mean, internet speed is often not optimal. Well, even in the UK, it's often not optimal for a certain family living in a village in the middle of nowhere or living in a town in the middle of nowhere, even. But in India, like it happens a lot. I think few months back, there was this cyclone that ravaged parts of eastern India, like Orissa, West Bengal, and maybe
Yep.
Bihar. Well, maybe not Bihar. And as a consequence of that ravaging, the states, well, not Bengals, like Calcutta's um, telephone poles were like so many of them were destroyed that internet connections went bad like overnight for like millions of people, and it took a lot of time for them to, well, maybe uh, they still haven't recovered for like in some cases. So yeah, so that is quite a nice point to make, that people might not be so used to that level of confinement. And if you want to check in with them, like in the UK, there was this issue with care homes not allowing visitors to come in,
Yeah.
and many care homes had terminally ill patients, and some of them died, even like lots of them died actually, and their sons, their daughters couldn't come in to say their final goodbyes. And when it was suggested to them that maybe you can use Zoom, well, Zoom is a foreign thing even to me. uh, and for them, like they couldn't figure out how to use Zoom in a way that would maybe emulate the kind of person to person connection that one experiences when they meet someone like in real life. Rajenki, what are your thoughts on this getting
Yeah,
in touch with unwanted people thing? Well, not unwanted.
I mean, again, given that it's all virtual platforms,
Right.
so I can always avoid by not replying or just keeping it short.
Right.
Uh, so if first of all, it's again
No,
because
no, no,
given
no.
that
Again, I'm not talking about texting. I'm talking specifically about like voice calls and video calls.
I mean, those who I do want to avoid, they already don't have my number or anything, so I don't think they would be able to
Hmm.
call me.
Hmm.
I mean, but then there's Facebook, and you can
Hmm.
just, you know, call on Messenger maybe. But then
Hmm.
uh, I haven't really faced any, like, I haven't got any call from any unwanted person, and there are actually not many like, I don't think that there is anyone who I can, call as unwanted. And but I mean, in general, I would say just receiving calls in general, because again, like, all of us are in the situation together, so that's not really a bad thing. But one thing, for example, that just like I would never really do a video call before, so so that's something that now I'm getting used to it, which is nice, because even otherwise, or knowing these platforms like Skype and Zoom and all, I mean, it's a good habit when you want
Right.
to, on a professional level, if you want to collaborate with
Sure.
people from other countries.
Yes, yes, yes,
So
definitely.
there are benefits to it,
People are
but
hosting
I don't.
conferences. People are hosting
Yeah, yeah,
6 day
yeah.
long, 5 day long academic conferences on Zoom.
Yes,
One
yes, yes.
question that I wanted to ask specifically to Prakash and Mahima. So, Prakash, the lockdown in Ontario, Canada, is it a federal lockdown, or does it only apply to that province or that state?
It's a provincial lockdown. It's not a federal
Provincial
lockdown.
lockdown. So, do the rules differ, like between? Do the rules that come with the provincial lockdown differ in any way from the rules that come with the federal lockdown, or is there no such thing as a federal lockdown? Is it all
There
a
hasn't
collection of?
been any such thing until now.
Right.
Uh,
Okay.
so
And Mahima, like the lockdown that you were describing that your family members faced, that was a federal lockdown, right? Like lockdown at the national level.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
lost you for a second. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
So the lockdown experience that you were talking about regarding what your family faced, what your family members
Yeah.
faced, you're talking about the confinement, etc. So was it a federal lockdown? I mean, was
That
it
was,
imposed
I
from?
think,
Right.
from
So
March.
it was imposed from New Delhi for the whole country,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
not by state governments.
No. Until somewhere in the middle of May, it was a complete federal lockdown for India.
Right.
But then eventually, I think they started like the unlock process, and then it mostly went on to the states to decide, because they identified two states as particular hotspots. So they
Right.
said maybe
Which
we
were
can
they? Which were those two states?
Maharashtra and to some extent Karnataka, Bihar, and there was another one I've forgotten.
No, but I mean, I'm just curious. Like again, like we're digressing a bit. Uh, can't the states deny? Like, isn't the Indian parliamentary system such that states can deny or like refuse to obey orders such as this coming from the federal government, or can they not?
I'm not entirely sure, because I
Right.
think this was this was in the this I think that there are three lists in the constitution.
Mm-hmm.
There's the state, center, and list that's applicable, like that both state and center have jurisdiction over. I
Right.
think
Okay.
this fell under the list which is decided over by the center, but I'm not entirely sure. But
Sure.
anyway, I think any state in the initial bits would not ideally have denied this in the interests of public health.
Right.
But
No, no. I asked
towards
this.
the end
Yeah,
of
I asked this
May,
because
it,
I seem to recollect, although maybe I mean, yeah, my recollections might not be that good regarding this. I seem to recollect that when like conversations first started to take on some momentum regarding this lockdown in India, regarding like the possibility of a nationwide lockdown or any kind of lockdown in India, I remember Kejriwal, the Chief Minister of Delhi, Arvind Kejriwal of the Aam Aadmi Party,
yeah,
saying things along the lines of the federal government is doing this because they want to focus the attention of the public from their economic failures, etc., etc. So, I mean, remember that quote, and I think he was only saying that because of this federal state distinction. Although Delhi is not a state, and that's a whole different legal debate. But yeah, okay, fine. I get it now. So all the lockdowns that you described, Mahima, were federal lockdowns, like in India.
until May, yeah.
Okay,
But now the state decides.
okay, fine. Okay, so now we move on to a slightly lighter topic. So I'm going to start with Prakash again. So a lockdown, as I said earlier, like by definition, tends to give you a lot of alone time. So people tend to use such kinds of periods for different purposes. People, I don't know, one might read, I don't know, all of Dickens or whatever. One might watch five TV series, 10 movies. So I want to come to all three of you and ask, what sort of artistic content did you guys acquaint yourselves with during this lockdown? And I'm not talking about, say, a TV series that you were watching before the lockdown started and you kept watching as the lockdown progressed. But I'm saying something that you think you wouldn't have watched, like you wouldn't have watched had the lockdown not come into force uh, the way it has. Prakash.
I wouldn't say there is any such TV series or movie that I watched because of the lockdown.
Well,
But
because I'm not saying because I'm saying something that you have watched that, or maybe a book, maybe an essay that you think you probably wouldn't have spent time on had
I
you
mean,
not been in isolation.
there's one thing that I was I was not that big of a, say, news follower, but
Right.
because of the lockdown,
Right.
because I started following the news around COVID,
Mm.
I means other news also came into my vision, and then I started keeping a track of them also. So yeah, this might be associated with the lockdown.
Yeah, but this is, I mean, of course, like in a COVID lockdown, you follow COVID news. If there was no COVID lockdown, you wouldn't be able to follow COVID news. That's a very clever answer. Okay, Mahima.
I okay.
Okay, no. Yes, sorry, go on. Prakash?
No, I was saying that because I was following COVID news, I
Right,
saw some other news that were running parallel to that COVID news, and which I wouldn't have seen otherwise. That
right.
was the point.
Yeah, right.
Of course, you have to pull my leg.
Yes, of course. No. I'm joking. Uh, Mahima, any books, novels, short stories, TV series, movies,
I historically
what
consume a
is
lot of.
webisodes? Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I mean, I historically consume a lot of OTT content, so that didn't change. It didn't even escalate, to be honest, because I realized I'd go mad if I'm watching something all the time. I did start. I so one of my flatmates bought a ukulele during the lockdown because she realized she needs to do something with her time. So I
Mm-hmm,
started playing the uke with her, which was fun. And I mean, as much as I wanted to do this all my life,
mm-hmm.
I've realized that I felt like I could do it now, and if not now,
Right,
when?
right. Yeah,
I think that crept in because it was available, there was time, and I'd always wanted to do it. So I think all three of them just came together and I learned a
right,
bit.
right.
I think that was one thing that I probably wouldn't have done otherwise, and it would just be something on my list. But given the lockdown, I ended up doing like a bit of it.
And like novels, short stories, books, like on that
Yeah,
front.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like I was reading so many papers for my essays that I kind of
Ah,
didn't
right.
want to
Of
read
course.
anything.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
I was like, let's just not read for a
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah. Okay, Rajenki.
Yeah, so there is not any new activity as such. It's just that maybe, so I always draw, so I'm just drawing a bit more. Although there had been phases, there was a phase like I was just like ordering, notebooks, sketchbooks, and sketch pens. Now that has stopped, as in, yeah, stopped, you can say.
I
Reading
was
more,
drawing.
definitely,
I was
because,
trying to draw this morning actually in chess, but then I lost.
oh,
Anyway,
what
it's a
would,
joke. It's a joke. Go on.
okay. And yeah, reading more than
Right.
before because again,
Okay.
was
Yeah.
not really able to
So
find time. Also,
I've got a like quasi positive answer on the reading. Can you name some like books, novels, anything that you?
yeah. So I started, I think, with a young adult. So Conversations with Friends
Oh
by
yeah,
yeah.
Sally Rooney.
Sally Rooney.
Sally
Yeah,
Rooney.
yeah. Yeah, Sally Rooney. Then there's this book which and also Problems of Philosophy by Bertrand Russell.
Bertrand Russell's, yeah.
Yeah, and then currently reading, I mean, it's only yesterday I started reading The Sense of an Ending, which I actually have got.
Oh, Gillian Barnes. Gillian
Yeah,
Barnes.
and and The Body Economic, which I'm yet to finish. Like there's a chapter
The
left.
Sense of an Ending is a very short book. You will probably finish it tonight. Like it's.
Yeah. This one, I think I'll get done
And you know what
itself.
happens, right?
The Sense of an Ending.
Yeah.
No.
There's a
And don't
very,
tell me.
there's a very, very cruel twist.
No, and I don't want to know, please. And The Body Economic, which is non-fiction
Okay.
and not sorry, and it's by Kaushik Basu and David Stuckler. Sorry if I screwed up the surname.
Okay, I only know about
So
Kaushik Basu. I don't know
and
about
but I have explored Manchester quite a lot, and I think that is something new. It's just that the frequency has increased for all the activities, like
Sure.
reading more, or even everything is just more. Add more to it.
Okay, now I've come on to the final maybe 2 or 3 questions. I think we have already gone through maybe 40 minutes, 42, 3. Anyway, so final 2, 3 questions. The most important of which is this. So when people like us, like all of us are in a way global citizens, I think all of you would agree. I mean, we were born somewhere, we studied somewhere else, and then when we think about getting a career or starting a job, or you get what I mean. When we think about a career, we don't necessarily, well, I don't know about all 3 of you, we don't necessarily think of being close to a certain geographical place for eternity. Like, I mean, we might think of maybe one day finding a job in Kolkata, finding a job in India, whatever, finding a job in Asia, finding a job somewhere not far from India, all those things. But we don't think, well, we have to be there all the time for the entirety of my professional career. So does COVID change that? Because I can say, for example, speaking about myself, I can say I used to previously think that a research career in India, like a post PhD research career in India, is bound to be like sort of like synonymous to academic suicide, because most of the departments are not that good. And even if it's a good department, I am so far from the university networks, the good university networks of Western Europe, not so much the US, Western Europe so specifically, that I can't really go to a conference in Berlin on a short notice, or I can't really, I don't know, drop in and out of seminars every now and then, like seminars happening at cities not much far from where I'm living. But this COVID, I'm starting to think that maybe this COVID pandemic changes calculations on that front almost entirely. Because if every conference that one can think of is going to be on Zoom, then maybe thinking about uh, being geographically close to the venue of the conference isn't a realistic concern. So I'm going to ask all 3 of you, what do you make of the effect of COVID on your future plans, especially like concerning travel and where you want to start a job and where you wouldn't want to start a job? So okay. Well, I mean, here maybe Mahima is the best person to answer because I mean, you have finished a degree right now, Mahima?
Nearly, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, Prakash and Rajenki are both like in the like middle years of their PhD. And well, I am also towards the end, but okay, yeah, fine. I'll start with Prakash and then come to Mahima and then
Yeah,
Rajenki.
I do think you and probably Mahima are the best people to answer this.
No, but then I said I'm starting with
I
you, so.
still my plans do not change for the next 2 years. I'm staying here and I'm doing my PhD here. But I
So,
think that people who are say joining a program, say
mhm,
who were joining a program in September,
mhm.
uh, this has definitely impacted them. I mean, there are numerous Indian students
Yes,
who are not
and
been
as
able to go
Rajenki
to
might know
US.
and as Mahima might know as well, like there's going to be a huge decline in the number of foreign students coming into UK universities, foreign fee-paying students like Mahima actually coming into UK
Yeah,
universities,
so
and
that's a direct answer to it.
almost all top UK universities like Russell, what's the word? Russell Group.
Russell Group.
all
Yeah.
all the Russell Group universities are like tearing their hairs out, thinking like how they're going to deal with the amount of cash that they're going to lose out of, that they're going to lose as a consequence of this new reality. And also, I mean, it's not just the COVID that bothers foreign students, it's also the strikes. Like, I think Mahima briefly mentioned it at the beginning of our session today. So there are all those things that often don't sit right with someone who has come from, say, the Middle East or South Asia or China, who is paying, say, £20,000, £25,000, £30,000 for 1 year just in tuition fees. There are so many things that don't sit right with someone of that background. And so, like, many of them are now thinking, why bother? Why bother going to Cambridge if Cambridge is going to, and Cambridge is a good example in this regard. Cambridge, for the whole of the next academic year, are going to go entirely online, like for all of their lectures, and still they're charging so much money. So anyway, that's part of the reality. Okay, yeah, Mahima. So change in
I
travel
think
plans, changing,
uh,
yeah.
travel is out of the picture. So I was on one of the repatriation flights when I got back to India in the
Oh.
middle of June. So
You
that's how I
you
got
got back
there.
on a repatriation flight.
I did, yeah. But I mean, it wasn't so much as repatriation as let's extract money out of.
Here's a thing I'd like to add, and please
Yeah,
hold whatever you're thinking, so that I can come back to you and ask you to finish the answer. Uh, I think it was Qatar. Was it
yeah.
Saudi Arabia? Qatar. So Qatar said at one point, at some point during the last few months, Qatar said they were not going to allow commercial airlines to come into their country to operate their businesses. Air India said to the Qatari government, well, actually, we are going to send an Air India Express flight or whatever to bring back our citizens. So it's not exactly commercial, you see, it's repatriation. And the Qataris sort of caved in and said, okay, fine. And then they found out that Air India was actually charging the very people that they were repatriating huge sums of money. And to the Qataris, if the equation was simple, if you're charging, it's not repatriation. It is still a commercial transaction. So repatriation is what you see with Akshay Kumar in Airlift, almost quite literally. Although in that scenario, when that historical episode unfolded, it wasn't just one person; it was like a number of people. But if he can take the credit away from female ISRO scientists, then what's the point there? Anyway, so yeah, so that happened with Qatar and India. Yeah, so go on. Repatriation flight when you got back.
Yeah, I think just like you mentioned Qatar, so I thought it might be worth saying. So
Mhm.
India had initially said that on starting August 15th, we are going to resume commercial airline operations.
Right.
So I had a friend who signed up for a Qatar flight, like the first flight that was coming into India on the 15th,
Qatar
and
Airways.
yeah, Qatar from Manchester to India. But like, I think 2 weeks ago they ended up saying that you know, let's not start commercial flights
Mm.
yet. They pushed it to August 31st. So this guy has now had to cancel his
Mm.
Qatar flight, for which he will be refunded in full, but in like 3 months' time. And he's had to urgently book because he was running out of his tenancy in Manchester. So he had to
Right.
come home. So he had to book an Air India flight as a last resort.
And Air India doing a refund, yeah.
But
So
did he get a flight? Because I remember that I had been checking flights and all the tickets are sold out until, like, if you keep checking Air India site till let's say November, all tickets are sold out, be it economy, business, or any. And I mean, there are no tickets. So in fact, yeah, this is something probably an international student might face, is that if they really want to go back home, and like if it's really urgent, then there are quite limited ways of going back, because given the, like, what I checked at least
well,
recently.
it's easy basically. Go to Pakistan and say you're a Hindu. The Modi government will happily take you in, if you get the joke. I'm sorry if it offended any one of you.
Yeah. But
Okay, no, sorry, Mahima, you were saying. So
no, I
I'm
think
not talking about travel plans as far as like holiday planning is concerned, or like going someplace for a few days. I'm saying when you think of your
even for coming back to the UK, I think if I want to come back and have,
right,
you
right.
know, pursue a career in the UK, I think that is out of the window for a while, if not indefinitely.
No, no. UK is still giving out visas.
They are, but like it just like from a familial point of view, like my parents aren't entirely happy with the idea of me moving now, because it's the whole, if you're in our proximity, then we know you're all right. So that has come in a major
Okay, okay, okay,
way,
okay,
I think.
okay.
Yeah.
Um,
There was something else I was saying and I've forgotten now.
job, travel, career, Qatar.
I forgot.
August 31, your friend. Anyway, Rajanki, what are your thoughts on this? Like, when you think of, say, doing a postdoc or starting a job after your PhD, uh, I mean, the sort of things that you used to think before, if you used to think about those things, or the sort of places that you used to think about before, if you used to think about places in regard to this thought, uh,
Yeah.
are there any changes? Are you like seeing any changes in that like landscape of thought
No,
now?
not really. I mean, not really. Because even so, I would just like, even before for long term, I would like to be in a city which has good connectivity to India, and that's it, like wherever it is. So, and for
Right,
probably I'll limit the number of hours of travel, but because even
right.
in India, if you live and there have been times where like I am traveling from Delhi to Manchester, and let's say my father is traveling from Delhi to a certain place, and I have reached to Manchester in India, and I have arrived in Manchester before him, reaching that
Mm-hmm.
certain place in India itself. So just connectivity, but yeah, no, like the plans have not really changed. Like
So like both you
it
and
will just
Prakash are expecting things to sort of go back to some kind of normalcy by the time you finish your PhDs.
mm.
Okay, I'm not so.
Sorry. What was the question?
So I'm saying like, are you like Prakash? Well, I'm not sure if Prakash is expecting this. Like, so are you thinking that by the time you finish your PhD, things will
Yeah.
sort of be normal again?
Oh no, I mean with respect to career plans, the plans have not changed. That's it. But like, given that we are experiencing a pandemic, it's all how it's all up to what's that, like, what is it, um what we are looking for, what we want, vaccine. Yeah, so it's all up to vaccine and medications, cure, and this and that. So
Right.
otherwise, like the career plans remain the same in terms of location, where I want to be and all that. I think Mahima has just
I think she
got.
disconnected. If she comes back, yeah, we'll see. Okay, I'll come back to Prakash maybe, and this could be, yeah, this could be sort of like a last question. So when you look at how COVID is being reported all world over, and when you look at the way people tend to misrepresent scientific facts, sometimes unintentionally, sometimes with good intentions even. So when you look at all that, do you think that there needs to be a reckoning at the global level, at a universal level? By universal, I mean across disciplines. There needs to be a reckoning with how common people look at science, or how for common people science can be portrayed as something interesting. Because for example, and Rajanki is actually a very good person to speak on this. uh, so for example, uh, back in March, I think it was March, the chief scientific officer, I think officer advisor, what's the name, Patrick,
I
what
think it's
was,
the advisor.
yeah, so there was a press conference which was attended by the Prime Minister of the UK, and it was suggested at that press conference that building herd immunity could be a way out of this situation. It wasn't implied or even suggested that that could be a strategy, but the press ran with that line, and it seemed to me that they were not trying to do they were not trying to do something to portray the government in a bad light, or they were not trying to be cunning. They were doing their job, and they could. I mean, to me, they were doing their job with good intentions. And actually, Rajanki's PhD supervisor published like thousands of lines of code on his website, I think, saying how that approach could work, what might be some like problems. So,
Um,
Was
Yeah,
it
he
like
was.
this?
I mean, he was basically explaining what herd
Sure, sure,
immunity.
sure. Yeah, but he was trying to do a public service basically. So what I'm trying to
Yes.
say is, when it comes to matters like this, when it
Yeah.
comes to matters that are actually quite technical, even in the scientific realm, do you
Yeah.
think there needs to be a lot of? I mean, surely there is a lot of work to be done. Um,
Yeah.
if we are to educate the public on the ills or the perks, or sorry, the ills or the positives of a certain strategy, what can be done more? And I'm asking you because like all of us are from the sciences in a way. Like we have what Nehru used to call a scientific temper, maybe. So
Mhm.
when we speak to our friends, when we see nonsense being shared on social media platforms, maybe we can take a very reasoned look at whatever is being shared and, I don't know, put forward an informed opinion. So what could we do? What could people do, Prakash?
Uh, Really, I don't know what could people do, because I mean, we have so in our department we have been talking about, say, an outreach program where you reach out to, say, very um, say beginning school students. But again, it's a huge challenge, because the kind of that math that we do, it's language protected. You can't even
Right.
talk about, you can't express the beauty of, uh, some Gauss's lemma or
No,
Gauss's equilibrium theorem.
I'm not talking about Gauss's lemma. I'm talking about the kind of science, in this case, what is it, epistemology or whatever? Like, I mean, that the kind of science that is very relevant.
Yeah. So I mean, I am not probably the best person to advertise or to to I mean to educate people about epistemology. I mean, I would do my job in making people motivated about maths, and probably if everyone does their job, then
Mm-hmm.
uh, people will gain an overall knowledge
Sure,
in
sure.
every area of science and arts, and then
Yeah, you do good for yourself, you do good for the community. Um, some famous economist said that in slightly, but anyway. Mahima, so the question was like, what can people like us, science educated young people like us, can do to, what should I say, spread scientific knowledge among people who really are in a position to benefit from it, and who can be like done the hard way, if like who can suffer like if they receive something that is clearly wrong on their, say, WhatsApp, and then they believe it. So, and I'm asking you this, well, in the context of, say, what often happens in India. Like India has very many brilliant scientists, like working in India, from India, of Indian origin, and all the rest. But at the same time, you see people like Ramdev claiming there he has found a cure for corona, and it's called, what is it? Coro
Coronel.
Coronel. Yeah, that he has found Coronel, or some dim-witted BJP MP claiming, was it an MP or an MLA or just a politician, claiming drinking cow urine is going to cure people of corona. You have those people, and maybe the way society is structured, they're in a position of influence, not if not necessarily power. So they're in a position of
Yeah.
influence, and at the same time, you have the brilliant scientists who are working hard every day to find a vaccine and whatnot. But those scientists can't get listened to if the people who are in positions of influence uh, have a vested interest in peddling like mistruths, right? So what is your position on this? What can people like us do to educate the public?
Um, I think this myth busting,
Mm.
I think the first step to this would be to just generally have a conversation. And I think a lot of it, like from a very personal point of view, when I see my parents receive a stupid WhatsApp text which they are leaning towards believing, so I tell them that, hey, this is not true. Like, I can tell you, I can provide you with material that says that it is not true. But
From whom,
honestly,
from whom do they receive these texts?
it,
Like from their
it's
friends?
it's a network.
Right.
So like yes, that's what I'm saying. Like, I tell them that, I can disprove this to you, but
Mm.
then I mean, where I fail is that I disprove it I may try, or maybe to some degree succeed in disproving it for them, but I do not go to the length of typing up an even longer or a simplified WhatsApp message that I then start circulating, saying
Right.
that, hey, there
Right.
is one thing that that person sent to my family and you might have got it too, and that's wrong. So I
I
think
mean,
that's one thing we can start doing. Like if you
that is a
want
good
to,
point, because there is this famous dictum that the remedy, the cure for hateful speech is more speech. So you are like, you're saying like people like us might be in a position to compose this more speech, but
yeah,
then if we are not going to
we
propagate
might
it,
not go the way.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And
So I think that's one thing we can do. So I mean, just like fight misinformation with counter information.
so like, but this step that you're describing, it is a digital activity. It is going to be a digital endeavor, right? Like an endeavor meant for the digital field.
Essentially, yes. But like there's one thing WhatsApp has done now, I've recently noticed. So when you forward something onto another group, it
Okay.
has a notification which says forwarded one time.
Oh,
So now you know that this has like, so there is a less incentive to forward things onto other groups
right,
now.
right,
So you can't just like mass forward it to like 50 groups at once. There's only like a certain number of groups that you
right,
can forward something to, and a certain number of times that it can be forwarded with
right.
one user. So for
Otherwise,
example,
there will
someone
be a
can
red
send it
flag.
to,
Basically, like it
yeah.
will show there will be a notification of some sort. Uh, okay, so I mean, I will like rephrase this question a little bit, and maybe well, before coming to Rajenki, I'll ask Mahima to comment on it once again. So in India and in most countries that have free democracy, free news channels, uh, there is always a news channel meant for business. I think, for example, like say Bloomberg, or
Yeah.
maybe Fox Business, Sky Business. In India, maybe there is, I don't know, NDTV Business.
There's CNBC, there's the news, and yeah, they've got these. Yeah.
Z News as a business page.
Z News has a business channel.
Wow.
It's called Z Business, if I'm not wrong.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure, sure, sure. Um, okay, so I mean, the thing that I was going to say was, do you think it's high time that countries come up with science analogs of these business channels, like I don't know, NDTV Science? Because for the longest time there have been efforts to propagate science uh, in like on paper, like journals like the Scientific American, or and there's a host of journals that have for quite a long period of time existed with the sole purpose of educating people on scientific research in a language that they might understand and enjoy. So do you think it's high time it's brought on to the digital sphere or to television as well? Or do you think it will be like a wasted effort because no one would want to listen to NDTV Science or CNBC Science when they can, I don't know, they can just listen to something sensational happening at the same time on some other channel?
Yeah, to be honest, I've never actually thought of a news channel that
Mm,
just is focused on science, but I think that sounds like a good idea. Because I mean, it might not get you 90% TRP, but it will give you like an odd five. So I think it's worth
right.
the effort if you can afford it. But also there's, I mean, I think in this conversation it might be worth mentioning channels like History and
History
Discovery.
TV, yes, yeah.
I
Discovery,
mean,
okay, right, yeah.
so it's I mean, it's exactly what you said. It's in a way that people understand. It's simplified, and I'm not entirely happy about the way they sensationalize and make
Sure,
science or history more entertaining.
sure, sure, sure.
But the fact that they are able to do it and get through to people, I think it's quite something. I think like it shows that there is appeal, even if it's to
Right.
a smaller.
Yeah, yeah. I think all of us can agree that making something entertaining need not necessarily be a good idea, because
Or to be
once,
honest, it doesn't have to be a very bad idea either. I mean, you can be fun and be informative,
because
and
there's
it's
always
just
the
about
risk of
finding the balance.
oversimplification. There's always the risk of
Yeah,
adding too much color where there needn't be that much color. Um,
yeah.
Rajanki, what are your thoughts on this question of like educating people on the science related to anything in particular? Like it's coronavirus now, it's COVID-19 now, it was the Ebola outbreak a few years back. It could have been any number of things. Like even when people make doomsday predictions about how the world is going to end in 2030 or whatever, like even with climate science journalism, like all those things, like what are your thoughts on how uh, like governments agencies, universities, individuals like us, like what are your thoughts on what we can do to take the knowledge and take it to people who might benefit from it?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's a very complex situation because
Mm-hmm.
you also come across, world leaders making statements, and then, I mean, what can you say against? There's no counter argument if there is no scientific, validation also.
Yeah.
Let's say for the pandemic itself, if I just say that X is useful, but then I cannot even show that, you know, I mean, there can be always this, misplaced logic or
Mm-hmm.
this. And in general, I believe that in the end, all of these reduce to the role of media also. So if we can keep emphasizing on, the value of science just being a very, let's say, something as simple as fact based. So even, let's say, in India itself, when certain medicines were supposed to be the cure of COVID-19. So if we can count, if we have, if we can question it, if we can question
Mm-hmm.
that, have they got facts? Can they give us facts? Can they give the science behind it? Is it proved? Or something like, if the people have this basic yeah, if the media can help in building this basic scientific temperament in general, which again, media probably, I think media can help a lot, then it might be useful. Because
Right.
again, I mean, you see world leaders making funny statements,
Mm.
and what can you
Like
say?
Trump's comment with
So
bleach. I don't know what Modi said, but whatever. Trump's comment with bleach,
yeah, yeah,
Johnson's comment on how he really
yes,
enjoyed
yes,
shaking the
yes,
hands of
yes,
every coronavirus patient that he
yes.
visited. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and when, yeah, they are representing a country, they are the
Mm.
leaders, like people
Mm.
will believe them.
Mm.
Just as individuals, we can start small. So let's say if I know someone who who easily gets influenced
Mm.
and who starts believing on, let's say, these WhatsApp forwards or something like that, someone just commenting that this might be useful, then if, like, at a very small level, at a very basic level, if we start having healthy conversations and
Mm.
try to build the scientific
Right,
environment, and then maybe it can build up, and
right.
just the normal tendency of questioning can just help, with examples or solid facts or something. Because yeah.
That was the last of my questions. And before we stop recording, do any of you have any questions to ask each other or make any comments on what any of the other like co-guests of yours said? Like you can, like, I don't know, say like a sentence or two if you don't have anything to say. So again, like like Prakash, do you have anything to say on what you heard from people other than me?
Yeah, I too look forward to grocery shopping a lot.
Wow. Wow, like such deep thought, like it touched me. Like Mahima,
Yeah, I mean, no, I think it was fun.
yeah, you too look
It's
forward
it's
to.
like it's it's again like helping enshrine the feeling of we're not alone in this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
Rajenki?
Yeah, I mean, this entire experience, first of all, was fun. And given that I don't really enjoy talking that much, so
Right.
something again during COVID that I am, one of your questions was, how can you really avoid certain situations
Mm-hmm.
where you have to be present online?
Yeah,
So this has made me little extroverted
sure.
on visual platforms. And otherwise, this was fun to know about everyone's experiences in general.
Okay, we will stop
And
recording, but don't leave just now. Stay on for 2-3 minutes. I have a few more things to say, which I will
yeah, yeah.
say. What is the word? Off recording? Off. It's not a stream, but anyway, which I'll say once I stop recording. Okay, thanks for joining. Thanks for joining, all three of you. Prakash, Mahima, Rajenki.